Sometimes you wake up feeling like the whole world is already on your shoulders, even though the day has just begun. You haven't spoken to anyone yet, haven't checked the news, haven't opened your messengers. But inside, it's already heavy. This isn't just fatigue. It's a sense of overload that can't be explained by logic. You're not lazy, not sloppy, not weak. You're just a deeply feeling person who's been living too long in a system not designed for someone like you. The modern world screams. Everything is loud, fast, anxious. Everyone talks at once. Everyone demands attention. You're constantly in a field of other people's states. And if you're an empath, you don't just notice it, you absorb it. You catch others' emotions, anxieties, frustrations, even if no one says anything out loud. And gradually, you stop feeling where you end and others begin. Where your desires are and where others' expectations are. The longer you live like this, the more you lose touch with yourself. This isn't just burnout. It's an energy overload. It's not about sleep, vitamins, or planning. It's about boundaries. If you're always available, always compassionate, always supportive, you stop being a person and become an open portal through which others' emotions flow. You're like a sponge soaked in what isn't yours. No wonder you have no energy left. It's not going toward your life, but toward processing others' states. That's why the usual advice, rest, relax, take a break, doesn't work. Because you don't need rest. You need liberation from others' emotions, from false duty, from the inner template that says you must carry everything, understand everything, accept everything. An empath's exhaustion isn't a sign of weakness. It's a signal that you're not living in your own rhythm, your own clarity, your own boundaries. And to return to yourself, you must do one thing. Stop being a conduit for the whole world. Because before you can help others, you must free your own space. Where your voice can be heard again. Where there's no heaviness without reason. Where you can feel not everyone else, but yourself. You walk down the street as if everything's fine, but inside, there's an inexplicable anxiety. You enter a room and immediately sense tension, even though no one said a word. Interacting with someone leaves you not just with thoughts, but with a weight in your chest, a feeling like you've lived their day instead of your own. This is the antenna syndrome. When you're so attuned to others that you perceive every fluctuation, every emotion, every unspoken fear as a signal you must respond to. You pick up frequencies no one has voiced, and this isn't a metaphor, it's a reality for those with high sensitivity. You have a built-in, ultra-precise receiver, and it never turns off. But here's the problem. While you're tuning into everyone else, you lose your own signal. You can no longer distinguish what's yours from what's theirs. Where your feelings truly lie, and where they're just reflections of someone else's pain, anger, or anxiety. And suddenly, you're reacting to things that have nothing to do with you. You try to help, to understand, to invest energy, unaware that you've stepped into a process that shouldn't have involved you. An antenna is useful if you can switch it off, but if it's always active, it turns your psyche into an open network with no filter. Everything gets in, and each day feels heavier. You grow tired of life itself, and the reason is simple. You're not living your own life. Empaths often confuse sensitivity with obligation. If you feel it, you must act. If you notice it, you must help. If you see pain, you must relieve it. But this is a trap, because you don't have to respond to every signal. You don't have to be an antenna without an off button. You have the right to close off, recalibrate, focus on yourself. Only then will you hear your inner voice again. Only then will you understand what you want, not what others' emotions have made you believe you want. The ability to feel is a gift, but if you don't learn to manage it, it becomes a burden. So it's time to learn how to adjust your antenna, and most importantly, to turn it off when needed. You say yes even when everything inside resists. You agree to help even when you can barely stand. You respond to others' requests even when you need support yourself. And every time you put others above yourself, you think you're doing the right thing, being kind, being human. But let's call it what it is. This isn't kindness, it's guilt. Guilt ingrained since childhood. Guilt woven into culture. Guilt you've mistaken for conscience. It whispers that you're selfish if you say no, that you're ungrateful if you walk away, that you must endure because someone was once there for you. This guilt is quiet, but tenacious. It sits inside and dictates your decisions. You want to rest, it calls you lazy. You want to say no, it convinces you you're letting people down. You want to set boundaries, it shoves the image of a good person in your face. Always available, always saving, always there. And you fall for it, because you're afraid of being seen as bad. Afraid someone will be hurt, turn away, stop loving you. But real kindness isn't born from fear. Real kindness comes from fullness, from choice, from awareness, not from duty. Guilt is a form of manipulation, and often we manipulate ourselves. We keep ourselves in a cage built from false beliefs. We've been taught that refusal is rudeness, that self-care is selfishness, that silence is betrayal. But that's a lie. Carl Jung wrote that a person becomes whole only by recognizing their shadows, and guilt is a shadow disguised as morality. To break free, ask yourself one question. Am I doing this out of love or fear? If it's love, go ahead. If it's fear, stop. Because every time you sacrifice yourself for someone else's comfort, you reinforce an old lie, that you don't matter. And that's not true. You matter. Your feelings matter. Your boundaries are sacred. And if someone can't accept your no, that's their problem, not yours. Liberation begins when you stop confusing guilt with kindness, when you finally allow yourself to choose yourself without justification or shame. One of the hardest steps in life is walking away from those you love, or who say they love you. It doesn't always involve drama, betrayal, or cruelty. Sometimes it's just the realization that the connection no longer helps you grow, that you're no longer where you used to be inside. But at that moment, guilt kicks in. You remember all they've given you, all they've endured, all they've done, and leaving feels like betrayal, like you must stay, continue, endure, save, even if it hurts, especially if it's family. We've been taught since childhood that parents are sacred, that family is forever, that gratitude means obedience. But this is a dangerous distortion. Carl Jung said the path to oneself begins with individuation, separating from collective patterns, from roles imposed by society, from images forced upon you. And sometimes that means leaving, not with anger, not with blame, but with the quiet understanding that your soul needs space. Because love without respect isn't love. Care without freedom isn't care. If someone constantly dismisses your feelings, if they guilt-trip you, manipulate closeness, punish with silence, demand but never give, you have the right to leave. Even if it's your mother, even if it's your partner, childhood friend, mentor, because you belong to no one. And your life isn't meant to serve others' expectations. Leaving isn't selfishness, it's maturity. It's recognizing that some relationships have run their course. Some connections weren't meant to last forever, just to teach a lesson. And once the lesson is learned, the chain can be broken. You don't owe explanations. You don't need to justify. Your pain is reason enough. Your exhaustion is argument enough. Your right to be yourself outweighs any family rule. Leaving is an act of self-love, a way to tell the world, I no longer choose pain. I choose growth. I choose freedom. And if someone doesn't understand, that's their journey. Yours begins where you stop enduring just to be good in others' eyes. You don't have to earn the right to be yourself. You already have it. You've always believed that a kind person is one who forgives, understands, endures, and is always ready to help. You became this way because the world made it clear. Be convenient, and you'll be accepted. But if you set boundaries, say no, stand up for yourself, you'll be seen as cold, selfish, harsh. Let's dig deeper. Self-sacrifice isn't kindness. It's a hidden form of fear. Fear of rejection, blame, misunderstanding. When you constantly give, even when you're empty, you're not showing love. You're proving your dependence on external validation. You're afraid that if you don't give everything, you won't be loved. And you live in this transaction. You for love. You for acceptance. You so you won't be abandoned. But real kindness doesn't require self-erasure. It doesn't ask you to dissolve, forget yourself, lose yourself in others' needs. Carl Jung wrote that the mask we wear for society is often the opposite of our true face. And often, so-called kindness is just a mask. Behind it isn't light, it's fear. Because being truly kind doesn't mean tolerating harm. It means protecting the light, starting with yourself. Kindness isn't about letting others use you. It's about not letting them. Because if you're exhausted, burned out, drained, you've stopped being kind. You've become hollow. And in that state, you're no use to anyone. Not yourself. Not your loved ones. Not the world. Real kindness comes from fullness. When you say yes because you want to, not because you must. When you say no, with respect but firmly. When you care for yourself as well as you do for others. And if someone finds your wholeness inconvenient, that's not your fault. You weren't born to be convenient. You were born to be yourself. Kind, whole, real, and no one's pain is worth your destruction. No recognition is worth your self-denial. Because kindness isn't sacrifice, it's maturity. It's choosing to live with an open heart and closed boundaries where destruction begins. You're used to jumping in when someone's drowning. You feel their pain and immediately try to ease it, fix it, cheer them up. It feels natural, almost automatic. You slip into the rescuer role because that's how it's always been. Because you feel deeply. But being an empath doesn't mean being a filter for others' chaos. It means discerning when help comes from love and when it comes from dependency. Because there's a difference between support and a constant energy drain. When you don't just help but repeatedly plunge into someone else's darkness, forgetting your own light, you're not saving them, you're drowning with them. Energy hygiene isn't esoteric, it's basic self-care. Like brushing your teeth, but for the soul. It means regularly asking, what am I feeling, and what did I pick up from others? It means separating yours from theirs. We live in a world full of emotional noise. Every message, conversation, object in a room carries a certain frequency. And if you're open, sensitive, unprotected, you absorb it all. Unconsciously. Then you wonder why you're apathetic, anxious, exhausted. Sometimes the problem isn't you, it's that you've been living in energetic debris. You sleep next to someone who belittles you. You keep objects soaked in others' resentment. You engage in conversations that drain you. You scroll through feeds that trigger you. Your aura carries traces of people you should have let go of long ago. And as long as this surrounds you, clarity won't come. Energy hygiene starts simply. Clear your space. Let go of the old. Sever the channels leaking your strength. Delete numbers. End dialogues that exhaust you. Cleanse your screen, home, body, mind. Not out of anger, out of self-respect. Because you're not a trash can for others' emotions. Because your energy is the foundation of everything you create. And if it's polluted, you lose not just motivation, but direction. When you stop rescuing everyone and start cleansing your field, silence arrives. And in it, answers emerge. Who you are, where you're going, why any of this matters. You've said yes even when your entire being screamed no. You've agreed, yielded, engaged, explained, just to avoid upsetting, disappointing, or displeasing. You've made others' comfort more important than your own peace, and with each time, your no became a betrayal of yourself. All because deep down, you believe refusal is wrong, that it's cold, selfish, indifferent, especially toward loved ones, parents, friends, partners. But the truth is, boundaries aren't cruelty. They're care. They're not conflict, but clarity. When you say no, you're not breaking a connection. You're testing its strength. If your refusal triggers manipulation, guilt-tripping, resentment, that's not love, it's dependency. You've been taught to fear being inconvenient, but maturity begins when you allow yourself to be inconvenient, but authentic. Saying no isn't about rudeness, it's about honesty. You don't owe explanations for every decision. You don't have to justify why you can't, won't, or aren't ready. A refusal is a complete statement. No additions, no apologies. And if someone can't accept that, it's not your responsibility. Carl Jung wrote that shame is a soul-eating emotion. And if you refuse someone and then feel guilty for days, it means you're still programmed to believe you must always be available. But you owe nothing to anyone except yourself. If you're drained, you don't have to support. If you don't want to, you don't have to meet up. If you need quiet, you don't have to talk. Saying no is an act of self-love, and the more you do it, the stronger your inner foundation becomes. The world won't collapse if you put yourself first, and if someone in your life can't handle your no. Maybe they were only there because you always said yes. Then your refusal is a filter. It shows who's truly with you, and who's just there for your convenience. Sometimes you look at yourself and don't recognize where your strength went. You used to be energetic, creative, full of ideas. Now you wake up heavy, procrastinate, lose interest in what once inspired you. You start thinking you're just lazy, undisciplined, broken. But laziness isn't always a lack of willpower. Sometimes it's a symptom. Your system is overloaded. And it's not about tasks, it's about carrying too much that isn't yours. Others' grudges, fears, expectations, requests, conflicts, emotions, all of it lives inside you because you allowed it to stay. And now you can't move forward because every attempt feels like wading through sludge. There's no room for inspiration because it's all taken up by others' noise. Carl Jung said, we don't just experience life. We unconsciously store others' archetypes, shadows, emotional constructs. And if you're an empath, you absorb this more deeply than you realize. You don't just listen to people, you live their pain. You don't just empathize, you carry their wounds. And as long as you do this, there's no space left for your own life. So before judging yourself for laziness, procrastination, lack of focus, ask a different question. What am I overloaded with? What am I carrying that isn't mine? Why am I so tired when I haven't done much? The answer won't lie in actions, but in energy. You're not tired from doing. You're tired from carrying too much excess. And once you start clearing your space, mental, emotional, physical, you'll find room to breathe. First a little, then more. You'll feel desire again. Clarity will return. You'll want to act, not out of duty, but from an inner impulse, because motivation doesn't come from pressure. It's born in freedom, in silence, in the emptiness where your own voice returns. So no, you're not lazy. You're overloaded, which means you don't need a whip. You need to unload. You were raised to be a container. You learned to listen, absorb, hold. You became a support for those who fell, a shore for those tossed by storms, a wall for those with nowhere to lean. And it felt noble. You felt needed, important, useful. But with each time, less of you remained. Because being a container means accumulating what isn't yours, and you weren't born for that. Your purpose isn't to store, but to shine. Not to be a vault for others' pain, but a guide for those ready to walk their own path. A container waits to be filled. A lighthouse stands, steady, bright. It doesn't chase ships or beg to be noticed. It simply exists. And in doing so, it saves. To be a lighthouse is to be rooted, to know yourself, to shine, not despite, but because, not from lack, but from abundance. But for this, you must stop collecting others' fragments, stop living in emergency mode, stop confusing your mission with others' wounds. Your sensitivity wasn't given to you to absorb others' chaos. It was given to discern, to distinguish, to direct. Carl Jung wrote that the goal of individuation isn't to be everything to everyone. It's to become yourself, a journey inward, a shedding of roles, a path toward wholeness. And in that wholeness, there's no room for constant self-destruction to save others. Those truly ready will find you. They won't pull, they won't drain, they won't destroy, because they're on their own path. And your light isn't a crutch for them. It's confirmation they're not alone. So you stop being a container and become a lighthouse. Not loud, not sacrificial, but quiet, clear, steady, as you've always been, just forgotten. Because you weren't born to be everything to everyone. You were born to be yourself, fully, unconditionally. You've come a long way. From exhaustion you couldn't explain to understanding it wasn't yours. From guilt over boundaries to the right to protect yourself. From rescuer to lighthouse. And this isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to yourself. You're not turning hard. You're becoming whole. You're not rejecting sensitivity. You're no longer selling it. You're not loving people less. You're just no longer forgetting yourself for them. And in this shift lies more meaning than years of effort to be convenient. Because when you choose yourself, the world rearranges. It responds differently. Those who came for your availability disappear. Those who value your depth arrive. Noise fades, clarity emerges. You begin to create, build, see further. And all this becomes possible after one inner choice to say yes to yourself. Not from pride or hurt, but from love. A love that's mature, quiet, unshakable. The kind that needs no proof. The kind unafraid to be misunderstood. Because now you know, you're not weak. not broken, not too sensitive. You've just been surviving too long among those who couldn't hear your silence. And now everything changes, because you're reclaiming the right to be. Not for someone else, for yourself, for your soul, for your purpose, and thus, for the world. Because when an empath chooses themselves, they stop drowning, they start shining.